the former director of marketing at acquisition.com. Got him on the podcast for you guys today. So this one is going to be insane. It's a value bomb. We talk all things starting with marketing, direct response versus branding. We go into AI in the world of AI influencers and clones, and we just chop it up a bit. So Tobias is a good friend of mine. I'm stoked for you to see this. This is a really fun episode. Let's get into it now. Before I kind of do the formal intro, I want to just hype you up a bit because there's very few people in I'll say our industry. I don't know. Maybe you don't picture yourself in like just the direct response industry, but sometimes I pigeonhole myself into that. What I'll say is there's very few people in this world of like direct response advertising that I would trust with a campaign more than Tobias. And from that sort of like vantage point, I don't just mean like one aspect of the campaign. What I mean is like, I think you actually have a whole sort of understanding of advertising that most marketers don't have from very start to finish. Tobias is the former director of marketing at acquisition.com. He's doing some crazy stuff now with AI, particularly in the advertising front, that we're going to kind of dig deep into today. Tobias, I want you to kind of have a little fun on this conversation where we can kind of explore just the stuff that you're nerding out over, because I think anybody who listens to this will get a ton of value just hearing what rabbit holes you've gone down lately in the marketing world and how that may or may not apply to people who run ads, because that's really what this podcast is for, is leveling up the advertising efforts of everybody who listens. So welcome, Tobias. We're stoked you're here, dude. And what's going on? How are you?
Thank you, Dakota. Yeah, really well. Thank you very much for having me. Super looking forward to this and just providing value in kind of any way I can. Particularly excited to talk about kind of some of the huge shifts I'm personally seeing on the advertising front, which is why I've kind of made a small pivot from like a lot of the hardcore direct response, like A to B funnels to doing a lot more in kind of the creator economy, just in terms of like following a lot of the attention and seeing how that plays out.
Let's actually dig into that a little bit, because like I know your background was like you've been in direct response for a while, right? Even were you 16 when you first started like sending cold emails? And like, well, tell me a little bit more about that, kind of your background in direct response, because I think it's fascinating to hear somebody like you who has been direct response through and through say something like what you just said, which is like maybe a little more brand driven advertising, or maybe a little more I don't know. It just feels foreign to a direct response guy to talk like that.
Yeah, admittedly, it's a tough pill to swallow. And don't get me wrong, like I still love the traditional direct response. If anything, one of the rabbit holes I'm going down is actually kind of the fundamentals. So I'm going back to all the old school books, Claude Hopkins, David Ogilvy, things of that nature. It's just how working on how you express those proven principles onto online. That's kind of the thing that's shifting a little bit. And again, we'll get into that in a sec. But when I first started, it was more out of like practicality than anything else. I picked up some advertising books and I just wanted a job. Basically, I figured that like if I learned how to write a good ad, I would know how to write a good CV for myself. And then I'd be able to essentially sell a business owner on why they should hire me. And that's kind of how I learned copywriting. So I had Dan Kennedy's The Ultimate Sales Letter, and I just wrote like 24 different CVs where I was pitching myself as the product. And some of those CVs, like I actually have a file on my laptop, it's called like CV just for giggles. And I kept a record of some of them. And so like they looked like sales letters. They had headlines. I put testimonials or like snippets from my school reports of like a teacher when they said like Tobias is excellent.
That's awesome.
And I remember one of them, it was like a 5-star hotel I was trying to apply. Like I just wanted a job, so I was applying for everything. And so I applied to work in like the marketing department of a 5-star hotel. And the way I talked about it was like, I will swim in your swimming pool so I have good product knowledge so I can sell it better to guests. It was just like,
I'll be able to describe the exact temperature of the water if someone asks.
Yeah, I can still remember the headline. It was like, imagine the smile on your boss's face when you hire Tobias. Like that was
that's amazing.
But like,
I mean, that's very Dan Kennedy, dude. That, you know, and it's like people talk about, yeah, you got to see how the sausage is made to be able to sell the sausage, right? Like you got to go take a tour of the factory, spend some time there before you can actually, you know, sell somebody on it.
yeah. And actually, it's worth noting real quick on like why that headline was a mistake. And it's actually a nuance that a lot of people get wrong with their funnels is like not understanding the target reader. So
Mm,
in hindsight, like imagine the smile on your boss's face. Like no one's actually thinking about that when they're looking at hiring. The
mm,
reality is a lot of people are like worried about losing their job. And so
mm,
me coming up with what is like quite an audacious CV, it was contrary to what I wanted. It was actually like I needed to look safer,
yeah.
and the headline is like, "I'm the safest hire you can have for this marketing department." Like that would
Mm,
have been better messaging for like the HR manager as
yeah.
opposed to yeah.
But
So
16-year-old Tobias didn't quite maybe see the fears of a superior at that moment before your first job. So it makes sense that maybe you missed that one.
yeah.
So what I find fascinating about like, because I've thought about this a lot before too. In fact, like I was thinking about, you know, if I sell another house, if I ever list my own house for sale again,
Mm.
the other day I was thinking I'm not going to let my realtor write the, like, you know, the little description that shows up below when you sell the house, because I'm like, every single time it's like, welcome to the, you know, beautiful gated community, blah
Yeah.
blah blah, right? And it's like, but me as a buyer, if I was a potential buyer, let's say I listed this house for sale tomorrow, you know, it's been lived in for 2 years, it's a beautiful home, sure, but like my big question would be, why are they selling it first, right? Like, hey, if this is such a great house, why are you leaving? Like there's an objection already in the mind of people who are looking at like any home that you need to handle in the copywriting, and like realtors don't understand that. But like my intro line would be, you know, family is torn apart to leave their forever home, but must return to Midwest for other reasons. You know what I mean? Like something
Right.
like that, right? Like if I was going to make a move and describe it. And
Yeah.
so what you're saying is like, you know, it's really, this is a principle that has been true forever. And so you're talking about going back to the great copywriting books. Like that's what I think people do miss is nothing has changed in persuasion, in how people think, and how you need to go to market and sell things. It's just that the actual tools have changed, you know, on how you can leverage those same tactics. But
Agreed.
okay, so zooming back out, so you're writing your CVs, which for those of us who are, you know, in America, your resumes,
Yeah.
and you're essentially trying to apply to many places. So what happens next? Do you get a job? Does one of these land, or do you kind of see that you have another skill set and try to go in on your own?
It's actually twofold. So I went from getting no response to getting a response as I got better. And so
Mm-hmm.
a skill set that I learned to develop was how to get the attention of business owners,
Yeah.
which became very useful when I started to want to book meetings with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of the job that I actually landed on, it was a sales job. So I think the business owner saw that I had some kind of like sales ability, or there was some potential there, and
Yeah.
so they decided to give me essentially a chance, and it was cold calling of all things.
Wow. What sort of industry?
So recruiting and like selling POS systems to restaurants.
No way.
Yeah, so I was calling. I was honestly, it was awful. I was calling like hotels or like restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
and quite often you're not getting access to the business owner. You're like
Right.
getting the person at the front desk, so you have to like sell the
Find a way
person
to
at the front
talk to the
desk
owner.
to
Yeah.
then get the business owner on the phone.
Right.
And uh, it was hard, like truly difficult.
Yeah.
But a reason it wasn't the first sales job I did. I actually decided to pursue multiple sales jobs because again, I didn't know what I was doing, and one of the mentors or one of the books said that like the best copywriters often have like direct sales experience.
Yeah.
And so I did cold calling, I did selling like in retail, like face to face, and then I also did door knocking around the UK. So I
Wow.
spent a few weeks literally knocking doors, um, And at the time, I thought it would make me better at writing hooks. So like, what's the first thing I can say to get someone's attention after you've knocked on their door?
Yeah.
Um,
It doesn't
the,
cause them to slam the door in your face.
the true learning of that was I couldn't close. So like if you think about a traditional like structure of like ADA, attention, interest, desire,
Mm-hmm.
and action. At the time you've knocked on someone's door, you've got their attention, and like
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of got their interest a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like converting that, and like it wasn't even like that hardcore like door knocking sales. It was setting appointments for someone
Mm-hmm.
to come in and do a sales presentation. So
Right.
objectively, it was meant to be an easier sell, but I was very good at keeping the conversation going and getting what they called bites in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't close them. I just couldn't close
For the
them.
follow-up.
Yeah, and so that was a key learning lesson that I took into my copywriting when it came to the close. At the end of a
Mm-hmm.
sales letter, like where I in person might have been scared about going for the order, like in copy, I didn't have any kind of qualms with doing that. And that's where I would start to ask for the order multiple times, like put
Mm-hmm.
stakes in the copy is like I moved into real estate shortly after that. And
Mm-hmm.
in my cold pitches, it was like, here's why you need to respond to this letter now. Number one, success like speed. Number two, if you don't say yes to this, I'm going to go to your competitor next door and pitch them the exact same system.
Right.
And like, I wouldn't like, I was not shy about giving people every reason why they needed to pick up the phone and call me.
And
Yeah.
you were able to pre-engineer that a little bit more given time, right? And like I always find it a fascinating question, marketing versus sales, right? Because really it's two sides of the same coin. I mean, like the best marketers typically have sold something at some point in time, in my opinion,
Mm.
but they like they're maybe not as quick on their feet as the best salespeople, right? Whereas the best salespeople probably aren't quite as sophisticated as the best marketers in terms of forming the message. There's a different skill set there, but I have a similar-ish background where I waited tables for 5 years through college at like a fine dining place. And
Yeah.
so I was constantly trying to figure out how do I, like, I'm 19, 20 years old. I don't drink. How can I sell a nice bottle of cab to this table of 40-year-old doctors? You know what I mean? And so it was a similar thing where I'm like, okay, I got shut down when I tried it like that. Maybe I should try a little self-deprecating humor next time to
Yeah.
kind of like, you know what I mean? Maybe it's, hey guys, listen, I'm an expert. Trust me. You know, I've drank this bottle a million times. Okay, fine. I haven't, but we did taste it last week as a restaurant. We went through all the notes and we actually determined that it goes great with this ribeye. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I would tweak it a little bit each time. But I was like you, where I'm like, I'm not a built closer. I'm just like, for me, I can do it, but the way I do it is almost always like, um, I find it's too soft. I think I'm too soft of a closer, right? But if I'm in a marketing role, I
Mm.
have the time, which is usually constraint in sales, right? Where you're like, you have a quick window where you kind of have to pounce and you have to know when to pounce and you kind of have to be ready. When you're a marketer, you have time to plan, prep, and think through the close ahead of time, which does lend itself to a different skill set. So I like that you brought that up because I've thought about that a lot between marketing and sales because it is really similar skill sets, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Claude Hopkins, he says like advertising is salesmanship in print. So
Mm-hmm.
taking those proven principles into the written word,
Yeah.
it's been super valuable. I'm actually curious. So I'm not sure if people know, like you used to be a Spanish teacher as
Yeah.
well. How understanding of linguistics and even
Yeah.
like language, like another language in addition to English, do you think that's helped you with marketing?
Yeah. In fact, I think back to so in high school whenever I was kind of deciding to go down the Spanish path as well. Spanish came easy to me, even though I grew up in the smallest town, white, middle of nowhere cornfield, right? Like nobody speaks Spanish there at all, besides my Spanish teacher. So learning Spanish was kind of a challenge in itself because it was just like, you know, in order to learn, I'd be watching movies on the weekend in Spanish. I'd be listening to, you know, songs and CDs and from Spanish artists and things like that before Bad Bunny was cool, by the way. And so like that was a challenge in itself. But what I found was I was very good at English already. So I won all the awards in high school for English department, whenever we would get assigned a big paper, it was like something I actually enjoyed doing. I found pretty early.
Yeah.
And so what's kind of interesting is I've thought about this a lot as we hire here at Ad Class, actually, because there's kind of this belief, I think, that you're either analytical or you're creative, right? And people have like this box, but there's also this linguistic box that doesn't always fit into those two sides of the coin, where I think people who are more linguistic in nature, who language comes easy, spelling comes easy, sort of like putting ideas together that might be complex and making them easy to understand. People that can do that, I think, actually balance the analytical side and the creative side in a way that's unique. And I actually think that those are the people who are really, really good at advertising, because you're essentially taking, the best of both worlds, seeing trends and then putting them into words, right? And so for me, learning Spanish was, it was like second nature to me, because it's almost like a puzzle. It's like, you can just see the trends. It's like, it's a part of your brain that you either have or you don't, right? My wife, for example, took all the same Spanish classes I did in high school, and quite literally doesn't know any Spanish at all now, right? Because it just was not ingrained in her mind. Now, if you put something creative in front of her, like photography, she's amazing at it. Whereas I don't have that. So there are these parts of your brain. When we're thinking about hiring at Ad Class, what I'm actually looking for now, before we even make any offers or anything, before we do any formal interviews, is I'm using surveys, personality tests, as many sort of data points as I can to figure out which box do I think this person fits into. Yeah. And is that a box that we could use at our company? Because I want analytical people for certain roles. I want creative people for other roles, and I want linguistic people for other roles. And sometimes there's a unicorn that can do it all, but that's rare, right? And so to answer your question, for me personally, the linguistic thing has made my career so much easier. I don't know. I can get copy done in a quarter of the time that it takes most people, I've found, just because I can just sit down and write it, and it works usually the first time. And whereas it's a slog for many other people.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's so Ethan, we had this chat around artists being some of the best marketers, and Ethan summarized.
He believes musicians are some of the best marketers, right? I was talking with him about this a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and he summarized it as fundamentally they do similar things, which is they both want to make someone feel something. Yeah. And so that's why he was musicians can be really good at marketing, just because that's what they're used to doing with their music.
I also think that it's just something about how their brain works, though, because music is one of those other things where it's you really either have it or you do not, right? Like my brother, if he tries to sing to a song, he quite literally cannot find the tune. Whereas for me, from a baby, the tune is just there in my head, right?
So to be honest, I would challenge you on that a little bit. And the reason for that is when I was 18, I think, I decided to start learning piano. Okay. And music did not come easy to me. I still can't really hold a note. I remember doing one of the grades, and you're meant to sing at the same time as playing piano. But there's quite a lot of math in music, and I was able to get better with study and basically practice. But what I found was to the point of music making, or language making you better in other areas. I retook some of the stuff I did in school, and I did it at the same time as learning music, and my grades improved. And it wasn't just doing it again. I think it was also a question of the music helped. There's studies if you listen to classical music, you do better in tests.
I've been hitting some Bach lately, man. Bach has been in my ears lately, for real. It's good.
Don't mess with the classics.
You can't. Yeah. There was a playlist on Spotify though called Trap Bach. Not as good. They tried to do too much. So I think you're right though. Muscle memory is a big piece of it, right? You can train yourself And actually, so bringing it back to the old sales letters, because you mentioned like you were reading, Hopkins, and for me, like I've gone back to my life in advertising, scientific advertising, a bunch of times lately as well. I feel like every time I open it up, I'm like, man, how did he?
Yeah.
This is still really good. You know what I mean? And there's just books like that. So I agree. But what I found pretty interesting is, in fact, my first job in this space, when I was working with Fisher over at Agexa, one of the things like he said early on was like, read some of the old sales letters, even just like write them word for word. Right. And so I did that for a little while in my notebook. Was I would go in and find like Gary Halpert letters, I would find like all these old, direct response guys, and just write it word for word to kind of get a feel for the patterns. And for me, that really worked well because my brain works that way. But I think also that muscle memory piece for those out there who maybe aren't linguistic in nature, who maybe like English class was hard for them, or like they think I can't be a copywriter or whatever, like that muscle memory repetition of like going through and copying the greats is very similar to you taking piano. It's like, hey, even if it doesn't click naturally for you, your body and brain and sort of like memory function will improve if you just put in the reps, right? I mean, that's really what life is put in the reps until you get good at it. But in this case, I think it like literally just handwriting it helps.
Yeah, I actually think that's something that Alex is extraordinarily good at. So Alex is really good at maths now. But what's interesting is he didn't used to be, and the way he trained himself on maths was he decided to stop using a calculator. So he just refused to not use a calculator and did all the margin calculations in his head.
Yeah.
I don't know what period of time he did it over. It was somewhere between 6 weeks and 6 months. But
Wow.
like that level of training,
You came out on the other side great at math.
yeah, basically. Like on meetings, you can see it where it just figures out the margin like that. Like it's trained. So yeah.
It's one of those things where it's a limiting belief too. Like for me at least, because since I was the English kid, I always believed I was bad at math. Right? Because I would get like a B in math and I would get an A+ in English. So I'm like, man, math just doesn't come easy for me. But now working in advertising and media buying specifically, it's like all I look at all day are throughput of a funnel and like, it's simple math, but it is math. And I'm the same way where it's like, I can figure out, all right, what is the 20% conversion rate on that number in my head pretty quickly because you teach yourself to do it. But like, in high school, I would have said I was bad at math. Now it's like, I'm looking at this all day, every day, and it's something that muscle memory teaches you to do. What would you say? Because I think like going back to like the fixed principles, right, of advertising, because at this point, like you're talking about revisiting the greats, like how those advertising principles from, even the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 100 years ago almost are still relevant today. What do you think those like fixed principles are for advertising that never change, right? The things that if you learn these as actual skill sets, you will be sort of a timeless advertiser. You don't need to worry too much about the tool at hand as long as you have these things.
Yeah, great question. So I would sum it up and I would chunk it up. So something I've like last year was involved in advising hundreds of businesses in person. And something that I thought was super valuable was when you chunk up information so that it's more applicable to more people. And so from an advertising standpoint, I'd say the two chunks to look at is the psychology, which we've talked about, and then the mathematics side, which we've kind of alluded to. But when I talk about the math side, it's understanding kind of the KPIs of the various funnels and channels and the economics of the business or the offer that you want to advertise. So, for instance, when it comes to the KPIs, it's each funnel type. So let's talk about a VSL funnel. I know you guys run a lot of VSL funnels.
Yeah.
There are typical kind of KPIs that you expect to see with a VSL. And I'm sure you can like list them off by rote. Like you're looking at the typical CTR of the ad, the typical KPI of the opt-in page, with the throughput of the VSL page, bookings all the way down to the sale. You typically see standardized numbers, which is the stuff that you should hit or you should aim for. And so ahead of time, you can kind of know how good a campaign is doing in relation to those KPIs.
Yeah.
This is why I think brand is so valuable. Brand adds this intangible magic that seems to just lift
Just
all of those
boosts every stat.
underlying KPIs. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like on cold traffic, let's say for an opt-in. So an opt-in is a page where you collect the lead, name, email, and phone number. You might expect KPI between 20 to 30%. True cold
Yep.
traffic is probably closer to 20% at scale.
Even 15 to 20%. Yeah.
Exactly. You
Without brand.
put brand on that, the
Mm-hmm.
opt-in page can be 50%. Like
Yeah.
you collect someone's email from a YouTube video, you're expecting 50 to 60% there. It
Right.
just beats KPI because, and also the audience is warmer. So
Yeah.
understanding that in relation to marketing is quite valuable. Like ahead of time, you can run a campaign knowing kind of the targets that you're wanting to hit,
Yeah.
and you can start to shift your messaging based on that feedback. Like if
It's a cheat code for like agencies as well. Like that, what you just described, a lot of times when I'm talking to people about like why work with an agency at all, if it's right for you to work with, because I don't think everyone should work with an agency personally. Like even though I run one, I'm like, there's many cases in which you should not hire an agency.
yeah,
But those who should are the people who need that sort of like outside exposure to what's working in the marketplace. Because more times than not, when people come to me, they have no idea what their KPIs are. They have no idea what to expect from the funnel. All
yeah,
they know is relative stats to what they have already done.
yeah,
And so when someone comes to me and their opt in page is performing at 10%, and I say, hey, this is like the glaring issue because industry standard here is 25%. Now we know right away how to fix this problem for them. But most people don't know their math. So I'm really happy you brought up mathematics because I think like people don't typically think math in advertising or math and marketing at all, right? What
true.
would you say like when you say brand boosts all the performance, of the funnel? I've seen it firsthand as well, by the way.
Yeah,
And I've talked a lot lately about how like even Advantage Plus audience targeting on Meta, people think that's broad, but really what it's using is your brand following first and heaviest, and then going out a little bit broad. So like even paid advertising efforts really are coming back around to brand now. What would you say is like the primary when you say brand, like tell me what you mean, right? Tell me essentially what that looks like in your mind, because people think, okay, I need 10 million followers, right? But that's
Mm.
not necessarily the case here.
Yeah, great question. I think it's multifaceted, and maybe this is a bit of a cop out of an answer, so I apologize. But I think it's multifaceted depending on the context. So, um, like again, chunking it into two buckets. There's kind of brand from a personal brand standpoint. So this is where
Yep.
you see people with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of followers.
Yep.
There's a definition of brand there, and then there's like a more traditional view of brand where it's like Nike or Adidas, Reebok,
Mm-hmm.
Apple, things of that nature.
Yep.
When it comes to traditional branding, I have a very biased view that the more customers you have, the bigger your brand. So if you look at Apple, how many customers do they have? It's like a
Insane.
decent chunk of the world population
Yeah.
have an Apple smartphone,
Most of the US population and then decent chunk of the rest of the world. Yeah.
and so I view a way to build a brand from an advertising standpoint is to sell more customers through
Yeah.
that traditional lens. From a personal brand perspective, um, the loose definition that I've kind of accepted is to do with associations. So
Mm.
what you associate you with, in addition to ultimately warming up an audience, so they're not true cold. They've never seen you before. It's just they've seen your name, image, and likeness in some form of media, probably multiple times. And depending on what you're building your brand to stand for, that's what they associate with you. And so
Yeah.
if you
And not
layer,
all associations are good either.
no, they are not, for sure. Um,
Like I think that's a mistake many people have made while building their personal brand, right? Like they have to do a pivot at some point, um, or they have to make sure that what they're trying to sell is already in line with the brand they have built, right? Like a good example would be Mr. Beast, right? Like a huge example here. Chocolate bar makes total sense for him,
mm,
right? Because his audience is young, probably likes chocolate, and will convince their parents to buy a chocolate bar at the store.
Yeah.
Whereas if he were to have come out with any other product that might try to hit another demographic, it probably would have flopped a little bit. So his existing audience kind of influenced what his product had to be, right? Whereas like I think that I personally have run ads for brands, people who have come to us and had, let's call it 50,000 followers or 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
And, on paper, it looks like they have a personal brand, but they got those followers in some weird back country way, like what back in the day when you could pay for followers, and or maybe they made like weird videos that went kind of crazy and then they bought the page and whatever it was. And that really does nothing for their ads. In fact, it probably confuses the pixel a little bit on who to actually go after for their ads, right? And so, talk to me. Have you ever seen an example where like the brand has actually been a detractor from results?
Yeah, I have actually. So multiple times. On the brand side, a good definition of it is like a brand is a promise, and like broadly speaking, increased congruence, i.e., like making sure that you're talking about similar things, helps increase your conversions. Like you'll see this with a brand that tries to pivot, and let's say they've talked about productivity for the last 3 years, and then all of a sudden want to go into personal finance. They haven't necessarily got that association yet, and so there's a little bit less congruence, and they'll see conversions drop, as an example. So there's kind of associations and congruence on audiences. Not all audiences are created equal. So I'm doing a lot with influencer marketing right now, and to your point of people who have tried buying followers, it's not the same as like an earned audience, like earning the attention. And YouTube know this. So like you will probably be aware of this, like if you try and run ads to grow a YouTube channel, quite often it has the wrong effect on your YouTube growth, because YouTube wants you to earn your audience with quality content. And so there have been numerous times where like I'm a huge fan of micro influencers that have like earned a loyal audience, because they convert at a higher rate often. And then in addition to that, those pages that have got a lot of low intent people who followed them from like viral content or things like that, they convert again at a interesting they convert in interesting ways, should we say.
For sure.
And so you have to be deliberate with it.
The micro influencer point is really, really interesting. And I've seen, like, I'm sure you could probably come up with a ratio even where it's like, how valuable is a follower when they're actually interested in the thing that you have to sell versus just, a vanity follower. And, because when we were back, like, this was, when Pace Morby's brand was launching originally, Caleb, my business partner, was the director of marketing there at the time. And I want to say Pace maybe had, 10 or 20,000 followers on Instagram, maybe even less. I can't remember the exact number, but if you've watched his channels grow over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, it's absolutely exploded. But what is the most fascinating about his following is that they are so dialed into exactly what he teaches. He has never tried to go out into anything other than what he teaches. It is still so true to, real estate education, sub 2, like all of that stuff, that like his following is the most loyal brand loyalist activists, right? Like all of the things that you want, the bottom of the marketing sort of funnel, they are that. And they were that when it was 5,000 people, and they're still that when it's 500,000 people or whatever it is now. Because he never sacrificed sort of the ethos behind what he is out there to do, right? Which is like just educate people, give value away in this specific niche. And I think there's a lesson there, because people go after this sort of broad appeal pretty often. In fact, I've even heard people, like, the opposite is true for some other real estate influencers who I won't name, who kind of went the opposite direction and said, you know what, I'm just going to like try to start making viral reels about nothing until I get a good following. And then I'm going to use that following to attract people to my brand. Well, that following doesn't care about your brand because they started following you for something completely different, right? So I guess one question I have for you, Tobias, because like you're talking about I know you're crazy good at influencer marketing and affiliate marketing. I've seen it firsthand. And so like, I think you have a unique perspective on how can someone kind of spin up an audience if maybe personal brand is not their thing, right? Like if maybe they don't, because like Caleb, my business partner, he does not want to be front and center on anything, right? He's not on this podcast right now because like he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be the personal brand guy. I don't want to do it. You know, I don't want to be like a dancing bear or whatever, right? I don't want to have to like say a thing to make money.
Yeah.
So what do those people do? Like, is it just like too bad you have to have a personal brand now, or are there other methods?
Yeah, I kind of see three other methods. So
Okay.
one is if you are comfortable getting in front of the camera, then do podcasts. You don't have to be the one who builds brands. You can tap into, and this is in relation to like personal brands, you can tap into other people's audiences.
Yeah.
So being meta, this is potentially what we're both doing today, is the people who follow me will like see you and like vice versa.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of that approach because like it just allows you to go into new kind of pockets of an audience.
And there's trust already built, like kind of pre-built with that audience. Yeah.
Exactly. The other way is through influencer marketing. So you mentioned earlier about Advantage Plus, actually like behind the scenes going towards someone's warm audience.
Right.
If you collaborate with influencers who already have an established following, you have the ability to take that and put it in your ad account. And there's a huge knowledge gap there.
Yeah.
For those who are listening,
I don't really want you to spill all those secrets.
just replace that, like replay that again and like sear it in your brain, and you will potentially you'll understand the next arbitrage of attention is that. So that's
Partnership ads, baby.
basically. And then the final one is kind of this AI, like AI trend. With AI, you have the ability to make AI influencers, i.e. faceless accounts that you control behind the scenes, and or again, depending on if you want your image and association out there, an AI twin. So an AI twin is where you upload images of you into an AI image gen platform, such as OpenArt, put 24 images of you in different formats, and then you can create an AI avatar that is able to go out into the marketplace, like you create the content, but that's the person in quote unquote in front of the camera. And
that's the dancing bear.
That's the dancing bear, but it's an interesting dancing bear where you can program a character that looks exactly like you, and you can kind of hand it off to your team to get the content out. Like you don't have to be the person in the studio doing 20 hours of content a week. You can create your character and keep training it for character consistency. But for all intents and purposes, you can have your own podcast without you being there. And my understanding is that's what Arnold Schwarzenegger has done with his podcast. Like,
no way.
It's completely AI generated. Like,
no way.
Yeah, behind the scenes, like Arnie is not filming like hours of podcast content. It's all been AI. So
and the tech is there now, as you're saying. Well, I saw yesterday HeyGen, there's another update on HeyGen too, where I think like they're kind of continuing to push this AI twin thing. I think you're uniquely situated to talk about twins. So I mean, you think the tech is there though, right?
Yeah, I do think the tech is there. And the other thing is like I'm a huge fan of turning negatives into positives. And so like even where you don't have perfect character consistency, those quirks allow you to get attention in new and unique ways. So related to like AI influencers in general, there's kind of a 4D nature of them, which is super useful for getting attention in the marketplace because you've got the ability to put an AI influencer in space or in any background or scenery that you can imagine. You've also got the ability to change their appearance on a whim. You've also got like different voices you can do. Like there's a whole, you can even have like a dragon talking. So like the future of education might be like AI dragons teaching children how to do math.
Oh
like,
yeah.
It's there's an element of creativity with AI that's unlocked a lot more a lot more potential. And prior to AI, you can apply the same thinking to improving your advertising scripts. Like a lot of copywriters, when they're writing an advertising script, they view it 2D with pen and paper. They're just writing a script, but they don't take into account the location shoot or the props or the sound. And so like this 4D nature, like if you try and think about it of like how you can approach to the different modalities of someone, modality being like sight, hearing, taste, touch, like
Mm-hmm.
how can you inject those elements into an ad script and
Yeah.
talk to people across their different like modalities is what it's called.
Yeah.
People typically have a leaning towards one or the other, and so if you understand that, again, you can put it in your advertising scripts to increase the trust. You can increase the trust, and then you can also use it to increase what's the word, relatability. Like
Yeah. Right.
if
You
you're
meet them where they're at, basically.
precisely, and you use the language that they use. So like someone who's
Yeah.
visual, they might be saying things like, "Oh, I see what you did there," or I can really picture that."
Yeah.
Imagine if you take that language and put it in your ads. It's like, picture this. You're on a beach. You see
Mm-hmm.
your screenshot of Stripe, blah, blah, blah. But you're
Right.
talking on the modality that they favor,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
increases like a trust there.
Well, and also like this, like what you just described is probably one of the biggest bottlenecks that I, as an agency owner, typically have with my clients, which is getting them to, especially for the talking head brands, right? Getting them to record a thing in a place with a person at a time without me having to fly there and do it, right? Because there's sort of like this, like I could write the best ad script in the world, but if it does not get executed properly by the person who's supposed to record it,
Yeah.
it's going to flop, right? And so I think we found over time, like, you know, people ask me all the time, does a highly produced ad beat an iPhone ad or vice versa? And
Yeah.
typically the iPhone ad wins. And I believe that the reason is not because it's an iPhone ad, but because the person recording it feels natural holding their phone and talking into it,
Right.
right? However, if I send somebody to record in a professional studio with a person who has never recorded in a professional studio before, the opposite effect is true. They don't feel natural. It doesn't feel like something that they're comfortable doing. And so that ad kind of flops, right? Whereas what you're describing is, and what I'm most excited about with AI, and we've started testing this already and seen actually really great results, which is cool. But you get to cut out the production piece almost entirely. You're skipping a whole phase. You're doing all the writing, and now you have unlimited creative possibility with the writing, so it's leveled up there. So you could write the best ad ever, and you can make it fantastical, basically. You know, wherever you want to put it, however you want to relay it. So sky's the limit there. You skip the recording part entirely, so the face of the brand and or the influencer and or the guru, whoever it is, no longer has to be a dancing bear, but then it comes back to your team for the editing. So essentially, typically the flow is, for those who don't understand how this typically works, I give someone a script, they record the script, they give back to me, and I edit the outcome. We're skipping the whole handoff, and so not only is this a 10 times faster experience, right? Like I can basically get a whole ad done in half a day now, right? From ideation to completion, but it no longer requires the time of the business owner, which I would say probably the number one complaint of business owners is the fact that they don't have enough time to do all the things that they want. So if you can solve both of those and you still have the brand trust, which is the final piece of like the whole puzzle, because this is a real clone, then you're basically cutting what used to be an arduous month-long process down into a day, right?
Great.
And probably making it better in the grand scheme of things too. What you said about Arnie is a really fascinating one, actually, that we could draw back to for the trust element, because those people who know, love, and trust him and have seen him in public and have already built that trust, who may not know that it's AI, don't see the difference. But what about people who figure out that it's AI, right? Like, is there a breaking of trust from that process, in your opinion?
From what I've seen, yes. So, right, this is a belief of mine. Ultimately, is like actually have truth in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is an old-fashioned view, but again, going back to David Ogilvy, he's like, one of the tenets they had in the agency is like, would you want your wife to see this? I'm a huge fan of like, the truth is like a lion. like set it free and it can defend itself. So
Mm-hmm.
in relation to like disclosing AI, a few things. One is there is increased legislation coming out, which means you have to say it's AI anyway.
Yeah.
And it just like that's an important point because oftentimes the legislation creates the environment in which you're operating. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the constraint you have to do just because that's the law. And so from a legal standpoint, you are going to have to disclose it's AI. And then from a platform standpoint, like um, with Instagram, Meta, so on and so forth, they are likely going to want change their platform policies anyway. So you have to disclose it. So
Yeah.
it might become a moot point. But outside of that, I believe that you should disclose it's AI because that builds trust by using it as a damaging admission. And
Mm-hmm.
it breaks trust when you pretend it's AI and then people find out. And then
Mm-hmm.
I've seen uh, thousands of instances like
Yeah.
that because I've worked across at this point hundreds, if not thousands, of AI influencers,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen the AI influencers that don't disclose that and the resulting refunds and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my view is both from a legal standpoint of like what is like the environment there, and then also from a data standpoint, at least from the data I've seen. And
Yeah.
even if you disclose it's AI, there is a concern that it will convert less. The reality is AI influencers are selling products and services just like real people, which what that means is there is an element of trust there, or there is an element of something there, which still means sales can happen.
Yeah.
And again, if there's fewer conversions than a human, the reality is AI also has so many other advantages that a human doesn't have that
Sure.
I think over the long term horizon, they kind of balance out, or like you can always find an edge basically. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always kind of finding that edge and then doubling down on it.
I think that like the legislation piece is interesting too, though, because at what point do you have to disclose? Is it only you're disclosing if I'm not talking about today, but let's talk future proof, right? 10 years from now, are you
Yeah.
only disclosing when the video is actually generated by AI, or are you disclosing when the topic was created by AI, right? Because at the end of the day, like the chat GPT and all these platforms are already so ingrained in our everyday workflows
Yeah.
that like if you really think about the conversations we have as a species today versus what we did 5 years ago, they've actually started to be molded by AI already, right? Like I fact check everything through AI now, right? Because that's just it's an easy button for me to have something else do my thinking. How is that influencing the way I think, right? Do I need to disclose anytime I have an idea that was actually originated by ChatGPT, right? Or is
Yeah.
it just when the video is created by AI? Because in 10 years, we won't be able to tell the difference. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of an interesting topic, right? Where the line will be moving, I think, as this stuff happens.
Yeah. It's it's a weird one. It's a wild one as well. Like I've actually stopped using ChatGPT as much as I used to, ironically,
Mm-hmm.
to the discussion of like first principles, like where is that information coming from,
Mm-hmm.
or and again, like I'll give you an example. In one of the marketing departments I was in recently, we were having an athlete come on board, and
Mm-hmm.
we were discussing kind of the rollout plan for the athlete. And two separate individuals, myself and someone else, had clearly done the same thing, albeit with different prompts. We'd put it in ChatGPT to come up with like some ideas,
Yeah.
like brainstorming. And
Yeah.
like when I say different level of prompts, like I did the kind of like meta stuff in ChatGPT that supposedly gives a bit better outcome. I was
Right.
like defining a role, act as Mark McCormack, who he was the guy behind IMG and is the reason like Rolex is at Wimbledon. I was
Yeah.
like, act as this guy, act as this guy, like setting whole different like putting famous advertisers in there and all of that advertising like documents I could have access to, and then running the task for like we've got this athlete coming on board, please give like different playbooks on how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing scenarios based on different personalities to see what new ideas could come in.
Mm-hmm.
Even after doing all of that, I then looked at this output and then saw the like central document in the marketing department of like what was being discussed, they were the same ideas.
Right.
And I was personally, after I saw that, I was like, okay, well, something clearly went wrong there. And
Yeah.
like I was putting esoteric people in plus esoteric documents.
Right.
So like
Like it should have been a unique outcome,
it should have been a unique outcome, but it was not.
but it
And
wasn't.
so like one of the things you mentioned ahead of this thing was like, where do you see AI being used in marketing departments? My current view is like a future of marketing departments is potentially you have AI developers doing a lot of like AI integrations and like AI agents and things like that, but you're still going to have some level of creative director or humanist or creative strategist sitting above that to kind of like quote unquote fact check or bring the big ideas to the table or lead a process in new and novel ways to shape the brands.
Yeah.
And whether that will change or not in the future remains to be seen. But
I think that is still the human element of it all, right? Is that humans still have the unique advantage of thinking outside the box, and AI is a big box. It might be a really, really big box, but it cannot get outside of that box. And what you just described, I've seen that too, where it's like, you can tell when someone is doing all the thinking through ChatGPT for sure. And I think that these AI platforms actually use the easy button as well, which is exactly what you just described. No matter how hard you push it to do something outside of its unique, individual response, it still comes back around to the easy button, which is what is the most surface level information that also satisfies the request, right? That's why there are modes like deep research or other modes that take a lot longer and more compute and more power, because there's an easy way and there's a hard way. And most of the time, these platforms take the easy way. And so we all start to think like the easy way of ChatGPT. You mentioned Alex using the calculator or getting rid of the calculator earlier.
Yeah.
What you're describing is essentially the same thing. It's like ChatGPT is the calculator of our generation. It is just a lot stronger than the calculator was. But like in school, it's like they made you put the calculator away when you were doing the homework. We should probably be doing something similar for our own brain's sake at this point with ChatGPT.
I think so. I think there's a longevity in that. Paul Graham has those essays online, and he's one of the founding members of Y Combinator. But he talks about in one of the essays when they were building Lisp, that I think is Lisp. One of their strategies was what they called run upstairs, and so whenever they were faced with two options, they chose the harder one because essentially it was harder for someone else to copy. And so to be honest, I've started leaning into that. Like when I said I'd kind of stopped using ChatGPT as much, it's like this is my effort as like trying to run upstairs on like with the for right now, for instance, I'm involved in potentially helping launch a nationwide coffee in the UK. Like my run upstairs strategy is there's a reason I've got all my old advertising books out, is like I'm following a traditional process of like everything like first principles. Like I can get ChatGPT to do the research for me in 5 minutes, but what I'm doing is like old school, like taking hours of my time to go through all the top coffee brands, all of the 5-star comments, all of the low-star comments, and kind of doing the homework no one else wants to. Like whether that will lead to a successful outcome or not, I have no idea. But for me, that's like I'm hoping that for this brand in particular, by doing this homework now, there's going to be new entrants to the marketplace, and like my hope is the new entrants lean on ChatGPT, and like this homework now gives it more of a moat long term, so that
100%.
it becomes a bit more defensible.
It's like you're doing the work no one else will do, even if like you said, even if it's not a successful result from this project, it levels you up in a way where now you using the tool is more effective in the future as well, right? And that's sort of it's a thing that's really hard to describe to people who maybe don't think this way. Like you and I are both like lifelong learners, right? And when I was a teacher, that's the type of thing that like I looked for in kids. It was like, oh wait, that one, he actually is here because he wants to learn. Like this actually fascinates him. He wants to learn. I'm going to put all my time and attention into like making sure he's not left wanting more from a learning, like a curiosity perspective. So there's the people like that. And for those people, what you're describing is the way. It's, I have a stack of books I'm looking at right now. I'm reading these books not because it's the easy thing to do, but because I actually want the principles ingrained in my head so that when I use a tool in the future, I have the parameters and understand what's good, what's bad. And there's that side of the world. And in my mind, that's the role you just described at marketing departments as well. It's like you need that humanist, right? The person who actually has a knack for understanding what works and what doesn't, why or why not. Everybody else who doesn't think that way and is just using these tools as a cop out for hard work, right? Those are the ones who are going to fall behind a bit in the next sort of era of hiring. And you know what I mean? Like you can put knows how to use AI on your resume. That means absolutely nothing to me because we're about to enter a world where everyone uses AI for everything. What actually differentiates you is your skill set and your willingness to, like you just said, run upstairs. Like don't push the easy button,
The other thing is, and I sound really boring when I say this, but I will say this till I'm blue in the face, is like go back to the fundamentals. Like, for instance, look at Lovable right now. Like you've got the ability to make funnels with AI. And so like with Lovable, Anton, who's one of the co-founders, he posted on LinkedIn that like 2.5 million websites got made in a month's period, which represents apparently like 10% of the websites, new sites on the internet.
Holy cow.
Like very interesting data point. But like if you actually do some research into that, not all of those websites got published. And a reason for that is because just because people got the website vibe coded, they didn't actually know what to do with it afterwards. Like there's a gap in the development of like they could get something initial made, but then when it came to changes, they didn't know how to change it because they're not a developer. And then in addition to that, like the same applies with the funnel. Let's say you decide to make AI to use a funnel, but then you don't know how to change it because you've skipped kind of like the underlying foundation of like understanding we talked about earlier, the psychology and the maths of it. So, I will say it until I'm blue in the face, but like still study the craft.
100%.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where the trust is so eroded already, right? Because if you know the fundamentals, it's as simple as calling someone, shooting them a text, like actually being human and using the fundamentals to get the result you're looking for. That's super interesting. So last topic I kind of want to hit with you at, as we're wrapping up here is still, you mentioned AI influencers. I'm still fascinated by the topic entirely. I want, maybe a call to action for the people who heard the three options that you described, which are like, build the personal brand, maybe make an AI clone was one of the other options, or borrow credibility from someone else, right, to kind of boost your personal brand. For those who really are trying to leverage AI for the like AI influencer side of things, maybe it's they have an idea for a product, but they just don't want to be the face of the product. They want to find other ways to go to market with it.
Yeah.
Can you give me like a quick like step-by-step process of what you've seen work when spinning up these AI avatars and like what to do and what not to do in a quick summary?
Yeah. So 80/20 is, broadly speaking, everything that you currently see with influencers, you can superimpose with an AI influencer. And so a good first step is to model success of what's currently already working and then just superimpose that with AI. And then just doing that, the fact that AI right now is still new, different, and unique gets attention. Like you can just use that as an advantage point to potentially get an upside. So there is an element of literally just rip a famous influencer and do it with AI. Alternatively, to the point of creativity, you can give these influencers a characteristic or a unique quality that helps them stand out. So like you'll see them with blue hair or deliberate faults. The reason for that is, again, it's been kind of engineered to get attention. So that's step one. Step two is like when I say everything that an influencer is currently doing, you can do with AI, is understanding that essentially gives you the blueprint of what already works. So that the same way as influencers are currently monetizing, you can do that with AI influencers. You can get brand deals. So some of the top AI influence accounts are getting brand deals. Like
Yeah.
they're being paid for sponsored posts. They can sell their own products and services, and they can also like sell subscriptions, basically. So anything you see with current real humans, you can do with AI. In terms of like leveraging that,
Yeah.
one is it's content creations become easier. Like to your point earlier, like where if you have a human who's the constraint, with AI, you can get more stuff out the door faster.
Yeah.
Just the fact of the matter, which allows cheaper attention to be slightly cheaper, and therefore you can get more volume out the door, and so you can win on volume.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you don't want to create these AI influencers, this is a reason I'm a huge fan of affiliate strategy / like partnerships.
Yeah.
Go out into the marketplace and sign those AI influencers up, or partner with someone who's wanting to like basically buy into it, or partner with someone who's wants to do that journey, and then attach that to your business.
Because I would assume there's already people out there who are really good at creating these avatars, who already have a little bit of a brand and or can spin one up pretty quickly. So you're saying essentially, as a paid media strategy, find those sort of partnerships, like and even just spin one up from scratch using an agency or someone who creates those as their main thing, right?
Yes, and like one of the companies I've been helping, we had 400 AI influencers that we did not create, that we were partnered with, that was promoting the business.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
there's just factories somewhere of people just figuring out how to strum up these AI characters that resonate with real people.
So, and this is what's interesting. It's not just factories, but like when you look at the AI influencer market, sorry, when you look at the influencer marketing like TAM, because it's a human, like 9 months for a baby to be born, and then let's just say 18 years for them to become a content creator and start like posting content online to build a brand. You've got like a 19-year like gestation period, basically.
Yeah.
With an AI influencer, you can have someone basically in their room like this, and you can create 5 of them in an afternoon.
I don't know that they would have a room like yours, though. I'm not sure that they would have that level of sort of like English royalty. You know, I'm not sure if AI can replicate that.
The point is, you can spin these up fast, and so to your point, agencies are probably going to start offering this as a service. But
For
then,
sure.
in addition, again, this might be meta. There are coaching programs teaching people how to create AI influencers. If you can partner with those guys, you've basically got a factory of their student base, and those students are going to want to make money. And so therefore, if you partner with one of these things, or even set one up as a campaign, which there is an element of like, that's a whole other side.
The art of the deal.
Yeah, but you can build an army of thousands of these things.
Yeah, man.
So
fascinating. Well, that I think gives me a good answer for, because, you know, honestly, like when people ask, because I test a lot with AI, and I've dabbled with a lot of these things, and our client base has as well, right? Like some of our clients have come to us and been like, hey, we want to test out this AI influencer we created. And still there's like, there's just a little bit of a barrier of it actually performing because they're not all in on that strategy, right? And so this is the same with any marketing strategy. Like one word of advice I would offer to anybody trying to just dabble with anything in marketing is that you're going to fail if you're just dabbling, right? Like if you're not jumping in with both feet, you will fail. Paid advertising is especially that way, where people come to me and they're like, I just want to test out a little budget on Meta. I'm like, no, you don't. You really don't, because you're just going to lose that budget. It's an all in or nothing type of deal. So with AI influencers, I think it's the same way, right? It's like you're either all in on this as a strategy and you're putting capital forward and you're testing and you're sort of like saying, hey, I could lose money for 6 months from this, and this is fine. But on the other side, I at least want something to show for it. Or you probably need to shy away from it, right?
I love that.
Is
I
there
love
is
yeah.
what type of business should go all in? I guess is my last question for you on that.
Good question. What type of business should go all in on that?
Maybe what niche have you seen really succeed using AI influencers? Might be a better way to ask that question.
Yeah, I've seen software and retail, so like D2C brands. The first thing that popped into my mind when you asked that is kind of businesses that have a they don't have that strong economics in the sense of like the products that they're selling are cheap. So they've or cheap or like lower priced items. Because a thing that this isn't just AI influencers, but just from social media. Social media represents cheap attention, and so it's quite useful for selling like it's quite useful for selling products that they say are below $100.
Yeah, low ticket.
So, yeah, so when it comes to like the maths and the economics that we spoke about earlier, like there are some products that you will struggle to advertise just because it's advertising does have a cost to it, and it's expensive to run ads at scale. So you might have to change the strategy to take that into account in order to sell at scale successfully. So that would be
Yeah,
my
there's a trust threshold there that exists where it's like, no matter how much I've followed you, know, love, and trust you, if you ask me to spend $10,000 on a product from an ad, and it's going to be hard for me to do it, right? So you're saying sort of like the lower priced objects, you know, and also like D2C. So you mean like specifically like e-com or like things that you can visualize with AI, probably, right? Makes the most sense.
Yeah, so like on TikTok Shop, for instance, I'm seeing AI TikTok creators selling an interesting amount of GMV on the platform with AI images. I saw one the other day. It was doing about 400,000 a month, and it was just all AI talking head on TikTok. So it's a form of cheap attention, and typically cheap attention. It can be used, to be clear, it can be used to sell expensive stuff as well with a sales funnel.
Hit the right funnel, yeah.
But it's also super useful for e-com. And
Yeah, just getting the front end purchase, yeah.
Yeah, e-com is very good at chasing cheap attention, which is why some of the top guys are using an increasing amount of AI in their stuff. So
yeah, and as it gets better, it'll be more and more. I mean, like now you don't even need product photography. You can just take you know, a photo of the thing, throw it in Gemini. Even like Gemini's new model that came out yesterday is perfect, and say, hey, remake this, you know, in red. So yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, this has been super helpful. We could go all day, Tobias. You know, we do go all day in WhatsApp. You're the only person that could ever get me to use WhatsApp. So, you know, that's just for you. But dude, thank you for coming on. Thank you for nerding out with me on all things AI and marketing, first principles. Quick takeaway, last thing. Give 3 books to the audience. You know, kind of you're saying you're going back to the first principles. What 3 books maybe are must reads for people trying to be better marketers, direct response or otherwise?
Yeah, Scientific Advertising, Claude Hopkins. If you haven't read that, I'm going to give short reads. Obvious Adams,
Scientific Advertising. There you go.
Obvious Adams. That's a 42-page document that just basically says.
I've not read that. You'll have to send that to me.
Yeah, I'll send that over.
We'll put the link in the bio.
And then maybe this is boring because it's such a classic, but like How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. Again, I'm doubling down on kind of the humanity side. And
persuasion.
So, just like I've started going outside more. Like I used to work 14-hour plus days. I've actually stopped doing that as much.
Started touching some grass.
I'm touching some grass, but like I'm going and sitting on a park bench, or I'm like just watching. Sounds a bit creepy, but like,
yeah, when you put it that way,
I'm seeing where the attention is going, and also just talking to people from all different walks of life. Because something Scientific Advertising. Well, actually, you know what? With that book, it's the one you showed. It's Scientific
Advertising
plus My Life. It's because the reason for that is like this is the guidebook, and then My Life gives context on how
the narrative.
to certain products, which there's some really interesting learning lessons there. Like, real quick one is like, the people who buy luxury goods might surprise you. It's not rich people all the time. Quite often, it's actually it's the cleaner who might have saved an entire year to buy a $5,000 handbag. Like, those small insights into keeping rooted into who the mass buyer is, I think is, particularly on like the scale of like national advertising, understanding who the mass buyer is. That's where this book shines.
It's so good.
Yeah, those are the three.
And How to Win Friends. Yeah, that's a great one too. I would say like I like books like that one the most because they speak to the psychology behind why advertising works, and that's the people who are really great at advertising don't care about the platform, the tool, they're not media buyers. They don't categorize themselves as that. They categorize themselves as people who understand other people. I tweeted this the other day, which is like, I think the best marketers are actually the people who can hold a conversation with anyone, and truly mean it, like truly like get to the root of what that other person cares about and hold the conversation. And the story that I shared, and I'll end with this because it was kind of an eye-opening moment in my life, and it wraps back around to your government system in the country where you currently are. So I was on a plane to Scotland actually, and it was the last leg of the trip, and I was going to play a golf trip in Scotland with my family, and I was so tired, man. I had my glasses on. I never, I'm like blind without my contacts. I'm looking just like a wreck, but I'm in like a first class seat on this little puddle jumper that goes from London to Inverness, right, which is where we were going for golf. And I'm sitting next to a lady, and I take a little nap, and then I wake up, I eat my English breakfast, and I realized that she's reading a book that I had seen before. It's a book that I had read earlier in the year on parenting. Yeah. And so it's The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt. It's about essentially how social media is just wrecking the mental health of a whole generation. Yeah. And so I basically just say, hey, I like that book. That's a cool book. And we hold a conversation then for an hour, right? Because turns out she works in school systems. I'm a former teacher. We talk about that, and I'm just asking her questions. Long story short, she goes at the end, yeah, well, I'm going to be elected to English Parliament next year. So let's get connected on LinkedIn and maybe we could chat. So I'm like, and just because, I spun up a little conversation on something she's interested in. And as a marketer, like I've always said, I want to know 10% about 90% of the things, because that makes me a better marketer. I'm a generalist in that sense. I'm not going to go super deep on one thing, but I want to be able to hold a conversation about almost any topic with almost anyone, because then I know I'll be able to advertise to them effectively as well. And not only that, but it makes you just a good empathetic person, right? So I like that story because like at the end of the day, I made a friend who's going to be in Parliament, and it was just because I commented on the book she was reading and I had read it as well,
Yeah.
Interesting.
I love that.
Yeah. But all right, Tobias, I've taken enough of your time, man. Thank you for being with us on the pod. I really appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime. And if you, what I'll say is, audience, if you need to talk to anybody about messaging, AI, anything of the above, Tobias is kind of everything everywhere all at once when it comes to his influence on some of the biggest campaigns you've seen, and also doing fun things like apparently rolling out a national coffee brand. So, Tobias is your guy.
Thank you.
Thanks, dude.